My wife announced in front of everyone that she was pregnant by my assistant. "I'm finally having a real man's baby," she declared. The assistant smirked, "Better genes than yours." Our friends gasped in shock. I just laughed and said, "Congratulations, you both just lost access to a $500 million trust fund." Their faces went white when they realized the broke husband they betrayed was actually heir to a fortune they'd never touch. I never thought I'd be writing one of these, but here we are. This happened 6 months ago, and I'm finally ready to share the whole story. I'm David, 35M, and until recently, I was married to Rebecca, 32F, for 4 years. I work as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company, making decent money but nothing flashy. Rebecca worked in marketing at the same company, which is how we met. Here's what Rebecca and most people didn't know: I'm the heir to a $500 million trust fund from my grandfather's manufacturing empire. The trust has specific conditions. I can't access the principal until I'm 40, but I receive modest quarterly distributions that I've always kept separate from our joint finances. Why the secrecy? My grandfather, William Chen, built his fortune from nothing and was paranoid about gold diggers. The trust requires the heir to prove they can live independently for at least 5 years before accessing significant funds. More importantly, any spouse who betrays the heir loses all claim to the money permanently. I've seen what money does to relationships. My parents divorced messily over the inheritance when I was young. I wanted someone who loved me for me, not my bank account. 2 years ago, our company hired Marcus, 28M, as my executive assistant. He was charming, ambitious, and quickly became popular around the office. Rebecca seemed to enjoy talking with him during company events, but I thought nothing of it. Marcus knew about my family's wealth. During a business trip, he saw me take a call from my trust lawyer and overheard enough to piece things together. I swore him to secrecy, explaining that I wanted my marriage to remain genuine. "Don't worry, man," he said with a grin. "Your secret's safe with me." Famous last words. I first suspected something was wrong about 8 months ago. Rebecca became distant, started working late frequently, and was always texting. When I asked about it, she'd get defensive and accuse me of being paranoid. I hired a private investigator, James, who confirmed my fears within 2 weeks. Rebecca and Marcus had been meeting at hotels, his apartment, even in his car during lunch breaks. The affair had been going on for 4 months at that point. James provided photos, hotel receipts, text message records, everything I needed for a divorce. But I decided to wait and see how far they'd take it. Here's where I got strategic. I started documenting everything while pretending to be oblivious. I recorded conversations, saved screenshots, and built an airtight case. I also began preparing the nuclear option. I contacted my trust lawyer, Patricia Williams, and explained the situation. She confirmed that under the trust's morality clause, any spouse who committed adultery would be permanently barred from any inheritance claims, even in divorce proceedings. The trust was specifically designed to protect against this scenario, Patricia explained. Your grandfather was very thorough. I also started moving money. I opened new bank accounts, transferred my personal assets, and made sure Rebecca couldn't access anything beyond our joint checking account, which had about $15,000. 3 months ago, our company held its annual summer party at a fancy downtown hotel. All employees, spouses, and key clients were invited. Rebecca had been acting strange all week, excited about something she wouldn't share. We were standing with a group of colleagues and their spouses when Rebecca clinked her glass for attention. "I have an announcement to make," she said, beaming. "I'm pregnant." Everyone started congratulating us, but Rebecca held up her hand. "Actually," she continued, her voice getting louder, "the baby isn't David's." The conversations around us stopped. People stared in shock. "I'm finally having a real man's baby," Rebecca declared, looking directly at Marcus across the room. "Someone who can actually provide for a family." Marcus walked over with a smirk on his face. "Better genes than yours, buddy," he said to me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This kid's going to have a real father." Our friends and colleagues gasped. Some looked at me with pity, others with disgust at Rebecca and Marcus's cruelty. The entire party had gone silent. I started laughing. "Congratulations," I said, still chuckling. "You both just lost access to a $500 million trust fund." Rebecca's face went from triumphant to confused. "What are you talking about? The broke husband you just betrayed? I'm actually heir to my grandfather's fortune." Marcus knew, "He's been planning this with you, thinking he'd hit the jackpot." The color drained from both their faces. "You're lying," Marcus said, but his voice was shaky. I pulled out my phone and called Patricia Williams, putting her on speaker. "Patricia, could you please confirm for everyone here the value of the Chen family trust and the conditions regarding adultery?" Patricia's professional voice filled the silence. "The trust is currently valued at approximately $500 million. Under the morality clause established by your grandfather, any spouse who commits adultery is permanently barred from any claim to the inheritance, even in divorce proceedings." I looked at Rebecca, whose face had gone completely white. "The trust requires extensive documentation before releasing funds. I've been gathering evidence of your affair for months. Hotels, text messages, photos, everything Patricia needs to invoke the morality clause." Rebecca started crying. David, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. Mistake? I laughed again. You just announced to our entire company that you're pregnant with another man's baby and called me inadequate as a provider. That's not a mistake, that's who you really are. Marcus tried to save face. I didn't know about any trust fund. Really? Then why did you tell Rebecca last month that I was hiding assets and that she deserved better? I have recordings, Marcus. Several people in the crowd pulled out their phones. This was already going viral on social media. Company security approached. Sir, we need to ask you and your guests to lower your voices. No problem, I said. We're done here anyway. I looked at Rebecca one final time. Enjoy explaining this to everyone. I'll have divorce papers filed Monday morning. True to my word, I filed for divorce that Monday. Patricia Williams handled everything with ruthless efficiency. The adultery evidence was overwhelming. Beyond my private investigator's documentation, Marcus had been sloppy, using company email for personal communication, charging hotel rooms to his corporate card, even taking photos that were automatically backed up to his company phone. Rebecca tried to claim she deserved half of our assets in the divorce. Her lawyer's face was priceless when Patricia presented the trust documentation and the morality clause. Your client is entitled to half of the marital assets, Patricia explained calmly. That would be half of the joint checking account balance of $15,000, and half of the household furnishings. The trust fund has never been marital property, and under its terms, she's now permanently barred from any claim. Rebecca's lawyer withdrew from the case within a week. The video of Rebecca's announcement spread through our company like wildfire. HR called both Rebecca and Marcus in for meetings the next day. Rebecca was terminated for conduct unbecoming and creating a hostile work environment. Marcus was fired for violating company policy regarding relationships with married colleagues and misuse of company resources. I provided HR with documentation of Marcus using company email and resources to facilitate the affair. He lost his severance package and faced potential legal action for misuse of corporate assets. Rebecca's public humiliation was swift and thorough. The video made it to local social media groups and even some revenge story websites. She became a cautionary tale about public infidelity announcements. Friends and colleagues reached out to offer support. Many admitted they'd suspected something but didn't know how to approach me about it. Rebecca's family was mortified. Her parents actually called to apologize for their daughter's behavior. Her sister reached out to say Rebecca was getting what she deserved. Marcus's reputation in our industry was destroyed. Word spread quickly through professional networks. He's been unable to find work in his field and last I heard, was working retail. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I got an interesting call from James, my private investigator. You might want to know, Rebecca isn't actually pregnant. Apparently, she'd faked the pregnancy test using a kit she bought online. The plan was to string Marcus along long enough to secure what she thought would be my inheritance, then miscarry a few months later. Marcus found out when he insisted on going to a doctor's appointment with her. The confrontation was explosive. Neighbors called the police over the shouting match. Marcus dumped Rebecca immediately and tried to crawl back to me, claiming he'd been manipulated. I blocked his number. 6 months later, I'm living in a downtown penthouse that I purchased outright using trust distributions. No mortgage, no debt, complete freedom. I left the tech company and started my own consulting firm. With the financial security of knowing I'll inherit the full trust in 5 years, I can take risks and be selective about clients. I'm dating someone new, Sarah, a teacher I met at a coffee shop who has no idea about my family's wealth. She thinks I'm just a successful consultant, and that's fine with me. The irony isn't lost on me. Rebecca left me because she thought I couldn't provide adequately for a family. Now she's working part-time at a retail store while I'm building a business empire. Rebecca has tried to contact me several times through mutual friends. She's apparently struggling financially and has been telling people that I tricked her and that she deserves compensation for emotional damages. Her attempts to contest the divorce have failed. Patricia Williams made sure the settlement was airtight. Marcus has attempted to reach out twice, once claiming he had information I'd want to know about Rebecca, and once asking for a loan. I ignored both attempts. Last month, Rebecca showed up at my office building. Security escorted her out, but not before she made a scene in the lobby, screaming about how I'd stolen her future. The security footage made it onto social media. The comments were not kind to Rebecca. To understand why this trust exists, I need to explain my grandfather's story. William Chen immigrated from Taiwan in 1962 with $200 and an engineering degree. He worked in factories for years, saving every penny while learning English at night. In 1975, he started Chen Manufacturing in his garage, making precision parts for aerospace companies. By 1985, the company was worth $300 million. But success came with painful lessons about people's motives. My father, Robert, was William's only child. Growing up wealthy made him entitled and reckless. He married my mother, Linda, when she was 19 and he was 25. Linda came from poverty and saw Robert as her ticket to easy living. The marriage was a disaster. Linda spent money faster than Robert could inherit it, buying designer clothes, expensive cars, and funding her friends' business ventures that always failed. Robert enabled her because he was desperate for approval. When I was 12, Linda filed for divorce and demanded half of everything, including future inheritance rights. The legal battle lasted 3 years and cost millions. Linda hired aggressive lawyers who tried to prove she deserved compensation for supporting Robert's career. William watched his family destroy itself over money he'd worked decades to build. He told me years later, "I created wealth to give my family security, but it gave them greed instead." After the divorce, William completely restructured his estate planning. He established the trust in 1987 with specific conditions designed to test the heir's character and judgment. Maintaining steady employment for 5 years, which I completed at age 30, demonstrating financial responsibility, avoiding criminal activity, the morality clause regarding spouse behavior, annual character evaluations by the trust board, community service requirements, financial education certification. I receive quarterly distributions that have grown from $50,000 to nearly $100,000 as the trust has increased in value. At 40, I'll inherit the principal, which is now worth approximately $500 million. But here's what makes it unique: the trust board includes my grandfather's old business partners, a family friend who's a retired judge, and a psychologist who specializes in wealth psychology. They meet annually to evaluate whether I'm meeting the character requirements. My grandfather's lawyers designed it this way because he believed wealth without wisdom was dangerous. He wanted to ensure his heir could handle money responsibly and wouldn't repeat his son's mistakes. When I first hired James, the private investigator, I thought I might be paranoid. Rebecca's behavior had changed, but I wanted to be wrong. James was a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. His initial report was devastating but thorough. "Your wife and your assistant have been meeting 2 to 3 times per week for 4 months, he explained during our first meeting. Hotels mostly, but also his apartment when his roommate is traveling. The evidence was overwhelming. 47 hotel visits documented with credit card receipts, text messages retrieved from Marcus's cloud backup, he'd used company devices, photos of them entering and leaving together, restaurant receipts showing romantic dinners, even a recording of Rebecca telling Marcus she was tired of pretending to love a boring man." James also uncovered their future plans. Rebecca had been researching divorce lawyers and had taken photos of financial documents from our home office. She was planning to leave me but wanted to maximize her settlement first. The most damaging evidence was a recorded conversation between Rebecca and Marcus in his car outside our house. Marcus had installed a dash cam that captured audio when the car was parked. "Once we're married, you'll have access to everything," Rebecca said. "David's too trusting to have a good prenup. I'll take half of whatever he's hiding." Marcus responded, "I still think he has more money than he lets on. Rich people always hide assets. We just need to be patient." What James discovered about Marcus's workplace behavior was equally damning. He'd been using company resources extensively for the affair, booking hotels using his corporate credit card, claiming they were client meetings, using company phones and email for personal communication with Rebecca, taking extended lunch breaks and leaving early for their meetings, accessing confidential employee files, including mine, discussing confidential company information with Rebecca. Most seriously, Marcus had been photographing documents from my office when I was in meetings. He'd taken pictures of contracts, financial statements, and personal papers, all searching for evidence of hidden wealth. The company's IT department found evidence of Marcus forwarding my emails to his personal account and copying files from my computer to USB drives. When I informed the trust board about Rebecca's affair and my plans for divorce, their response was swift and decisive. Judge Harrison, the retired family court judge on the board, was particularly adamant. "This is exactly the scenario your grandfather feared. Your wife's betrayal disqualifies her from any inheritance claims, and the public nature of her announcement demonstrates a complete lack of character." Dr. Jennifer Mitchell, the wealth psychologist, was fascinated by the psychological dynamics. "Your wife's behavior shows classic signs of entitlement and narcissism. She felt she deserved access to wealth she hadn't earned and was willing to betray you to get it." The board voted unanimously to invoke the morality clause and increase my quarterly distributions as a reward for handling the situation with integrity. Rebecca's attempts to contest the divorce were more persistent than I initially described. She hired 3 different lawyers over 6 months, each promising to find loopholes in the trust structure. Her first lawyer, David Martinez, tried to argue that the trust was marital property because I'd received distributions during our marriage. Patricia Williams destroyed this argument by showing that the trust existed before our marriage and that Rebecca had signed documents acknowledging its separate nature. Her second lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, attempted to claim that I'd committed fraud by not disclosing the trust's full value. This failed because our prenuptial agreement specifically stated that both parties acknowledged the existence of separate family trusts without requiring full disclosure of amounts. Her third lawyer, Michael Thompson, tried the most desperate approach, claiming that the morality clause was unenforceable because adultery was no longer grounds for fault-based divorce in our state. This argument collapsed when Patricia showed that the trust clause wasn't about divorce fault, it was about contract violation. Each legal failure cost Rebecca more money she didn't have. She eventually had to represent herself in the final hearings, which went about as well as you'd expect. The video of Rebecca's pregnancy announcement became a viral sensation beyond anything I'd anticipated. It was shared on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit, accumulating millions of views across platforms. Someone edited it with dramatic music and sound effects, turning it into a justice served compilation. Another version added subtitles and became popular on international social media. Rebecca tried to control the narrative by posting her own videos, claiming she was the victim of my financial manipulation. These backfired spectacularly. Comments ranged from "you announced your affair publicly" to "you got exactly what you deserved." Marcus attempted damage control by deleting all his social media accounts, but screenshots of his previous posts bragging about landing a rich man's wife had already been archived by internet users. The story was picked up by local news stations as a cautionary tale about social media oversharing. Rebecca was interviewed by one station, but the segment made her look even worse as she couldn't explain why she'd chosen to announce her affair so publicly. The consequences for Marcus extended far beyond our company. Our industry is smaller than most people realize, and word traveled fast through professional networks. Marcus had been building his career in executive assistance and project management. After the affair scandal broke, his professional references were compromised. Former colleagues and clients distanced themselves from association with him. I learned from mutual contacts that Marcus had applied for over 200 positions in 6 months without receiving a single interview. His LinkedIn profile views dropped to 0, and several professional groups removed him for conduct unbecoming. He eventually had to move to a different city and change industries entirely. Last I heard, he was working in retail management, making about 40% of his previous salary. Rebecca's family dynamics were more complicated than I initially described. Her parents, Carol and James Morrison, had always been suspicious of her motivations for marrying me. Carol called me personally after the divorce was finalized. "We tried to raise her better than this," she said, crying. "She's always been selfish, but we never thought she'd do something so publicly humiliating." Rebecca's sister, Michelle, was more direct. She called me the night before the announcement, bragging about how she was going to trade up to a better man. I told her she was making a mistake, but she wouldn't listen. The family ultimately sided with me in the situation. They invited me to Michelle's wedding 6 months later, while Rebecca was pointedly not invited. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The discovery that Rebecca had faked the pregnancy added another layer of betrayal that shocked even me. James, my private investigator, uncovered this through his continued monitoring of the situation. "She ordered a fake pregnancy test kit online and practiced taking convincing photos," James explained. The plan was to string Marcus along for several months, then claim a miscarriage after securing what she thought would be your inheritance. Marcus's reaction to discovering the lie was explosive. According to neighbors who called police, he confronted Rebecca at her apartment, accusing her of playing him for a fool and demanding to know what else she'd lied about. The police report described Marcus throwing Rebecca's belongings out of his apartment while screaming about how she'd destroyed his life for nothing. Rebecca's attempts to calm him down only made things worse. This final betrayal destroyed any remaining relationship between them. Marcus immediately tried to reach out to me, claiming he'd been manipulated by a pathological liar, but I had no sympathy for someone who'd willingly participated in destroying my marriage. Starting my own consulting firm turned out to be the best decision I'd made in years. With the financial security of the trust distributions, I could be selective about clients and focus on high-value projects. My first major contract came from a former colleague who'd witnessed Rebecca's public meltdown and wanted to support my new venture. The project was successful enough that word spread quickly through professional networks. Within 8 months, I had 6 full-time employees and was turning down work. The business generated $1.2 million in revenue in its first year, with profit margins that would make any entrepreneur jealous. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca had left because she thought I lacked ambition and earning potential. Now I was building a business empire while she struggled to pay rent on a studio apartment. Meeting Sarah was the universe's way of showing me what a healthy relationship looked like. She's a third-grade teacher who volunteers at animal shelters on weekends and has never asked me how much money I make. Our relationship developed naturally over months of coffee dates, hiking trips, and quiet evenings cooking dinner together. She appreciates my humor, my work ethic, and my kindness, qualities Rebecca had taken for granted. Sarah knows I'm comfortable financially but has no idea about the trust fund. She's expressed admiration for my entrepreneurial success and has offered to help with business planning using skills from her education background. When I eventually tell her about the inheritance, I'm confident she'll be supportive rather than greedy. She's already proven she loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. Rebecca's attempts to contact me have become increasingly desperate over time. 6 months after the divorce, she showed up at my gym, claiming she needed to explain her side of the story. "I made a mistake," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus manipulated me into thinking you were hiding money from me. I was scared about our future." I listened politely, then responded, "Rebecca, you didn't announce your affair because you were scared about money. You did it because you thought you could publicly humiliate me without consequences. You were wrong." 3 months later, she sent a 10-page handwritten letter claiming she'd been suffering from postpartum depression that affected her judgment. Since she was never actually pregnant, this excuse fell flat. Most recently, she's been telling mutual friends that I owe her compensation because she helped build my business success during our marriage. This is factually untrue. She actively discouraged my entrepreneurial ideas and insisted I stick to safe employment. Last month, I attended my annual review with the trust board. The meeting was more positive than any I'd experienced since the trust began. You've handled an extremely difficult situation with remarkable maturity, Judge Harrison noted. Your grandfather would be proud of how you've protected the family legacy while building your own success. Dr. Mitchell added, the way you've processed this betrayal without becoming bitter or vindictive shows exceptional emotional intelligence. Many people in your situation would have sought more destructive forms of revenge. The board voted to increase my quarterly distributions to $125,000 and reduced my waiting period for principal access by 1 year, meaning I'll gain full access at 39 instead of 40. Apparently, surviving a gold digger situation was exactly the character test my grandfather had envisioned. This experience taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate planning, it's simply being successful while your enemies self-destruct. Rebecca and Marcus destroyed their own lives through greed and poor judgment. I didn't need to orchestrate their downfall, I just needed to protect myself and let their true characters shine through. The trust fund my grandfather created wasn't just about money, it was about ensuring his heir had the wisdom and strength to handle wealth responsibly. Rebecca's betrayal proved I'd learned those lessons. Today, I'm genuinely grateful for how everything turned out. I'm building a business I love, in a relationship with someone who values me for who I am, and I'm free from people who only saw me as a means to an end. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. People ask if I feel bad about what happened to Rebecca and Marcus. Honestly? No. They made their choices with full knowledge they were betraying me. Marcus knew about the trust and thought he could manipulate Rebecca into getting access to it. Rebecca chose to publicly humiliate me because she thought I was powerless to fight back. They both showed their true characters when they thought there were no consequences. The money just provided a bigger stage for their downfall. This experience taught me several valuable lessons. Keep your financial situation private until you're certain about someone's motives. Document everything when you suspect betrayal. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people reveal who they really are. Public humiliation is often self-inflicted. Money doesn't create character, it reveals it. Today, I'm genuinely happy for the first time in years. My business is thriving, my relationship with Sarah is built on mutual respect and genuine connection, and I'm free from people who only valued me for what they thought they could get. Rebecca's betrayal actually did me a favor. She showed me what my life would have been like with someone who saw me as a meal ticket rather than a partner. Sarah and I are taking things slowly. She knows I'm financially stable but not the full extent. When the time is right, maybe after we're engaged, I'll tell her everything. But for now, I'm enjoying being loved for who I am, not what I have. The funniest part? Rebecca spent 4 years married to a millionaire and threw it all away for an affair with my assistant. She could have had everything if she'd just been faithful. Instead, she got 15 minutes of viral fame and a lifetime of regret. For those wondering about the legal aspects, yes, everything I did was completely legal. The trust was established by my grandfather's lawyers decades ago and has been reviewed multiple times by different firms. The morality clause is enforceable because Rebecca signed a prenuptial agreement acknowledging its existence, though she didn't know the dollar amounts involved. The private investigator I hired is licensed and all evidence was gathered legally. Nothing was obtained through illegal surveillance or hacking. As for Rebecca and Marcus, they've both mostly disappeared from my social circles. Rebecca moved back to her hometown, and Marcus left the city entirely. I occasionally hear updates through mutual acquaintances, but I've moved on completely. My energy is focused on building my future, not dwelling on their mistakes. The trust fund is just a nice security blanket. The real victory was discovering my own strength and learning that I'm capable of building success independently. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planning elaborate payback, it's simply being successful while your enemies self-destruct.